Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Robert Phoenix, beaming at you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. What's going on? It's 12 noon right now, central part of the day, Central Standard Time. And welcome to the Friday FARcast. In about 15 minutes, I'm going to be joined by Brian Mertz from Texas Caregivers. And Brian has been a pretty instrumental person helping us out with our anti-fluoride program, operation, community organizing here in Fredericksburg. So I'm going to have Brian on, and he's going to talk about Texas Caregivers and how he kind of morphed from being just a quote-unquote regular person into somebody who started a nonprofit and wanted to give back in some ways to people and provide some tools for people that are essential in terms of a certain experience at a point in time in their lives. And that has to do with losing parents to degenerative diseases like dementia. Anyway, I'm going to bring Brian on, and he's going to be here in about 15 minutes. And then after Brian, I'm going to have Brannon on from the Fluoride-free San Marcos, who Sam is a really interesting guy. And he was kind of on the blue pill side of things and doing some global travel. And Sam decided to return back to Texas, which is where he's from. And all of a sudden, his world opened up. He got involved in the fight against fluoride and actually was an integral part of getting the fluoridation changed in the city of San Marcos. And anybody who's been involved in this and in the fluoride, the anti-fluoride world, the anti-fluoride movement knows it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult to get this stuff done. Anyway, Sam and his group successfully did that. And he's gone on to some other stuff here locally. But again, the emphasis of today's show, because a lot of times, we talk about really big global issues, really big global problems. Right now they're trying to sort out, what Iran did or didn't do over in the Gulf of Oman, right? And we're kind of in that maelstrom now of information as they wave the flags, false or otherwise. So that's big picture stuff. And of course, we attune to that because it helps us stay sharp. It helps us to discern what's really happening. And sometimes it's not always easy to do. But there are proactive and positive steps that we can take on an everyday level to make our worlds better for us and for other people. So that's what today's show is about. Today's show is I'm going to be talking with two people who have turned corners and have decided that they want to make a difference. And of course, their interests may be a little bit different, but the bottom line is that they care about their community, they care about other people's experiences, and they threw their hat into the ring. And by the way, I'm going to make just a topical observation. They're both men. All right. And that doesn't mean that women aren't making a difference. Of course they are. Of course. But I've been talking about this new model of masculinity, and we're in that true note and cancer phase. And so what do men do when we're in that? We want to protect. We want to protect either our environment, or we want to protect the people in our community, or we want to protect this idea of family and our relationship to, parents and people that brought us into this world. So it's another layer. It's not a big headline layer for today's show. It's just an observation. And I've interacted both with Sam and Brian. They're both really great guys. And we're going to be talking about that today. Brian's going to be on board here in about 10 minutes or so. So that's the topic of today's show. And I'm doing this so that hopefully you're inspired. When you say to yourself, you know what, there's something going on here. There's something positive that I can wrap my head around and wrap my arms around. And I'm looking around my area, and I want to do something. I want to get involved. Whether it's the Fluoride initiative or whether it's a community garden, whether it's some form of outreach, either with elders or with the youth. I mean, we're at a time now where we need to begin to build some of these things back, to bring them back into our own sensibility and our own sense of empowerment. This is a really important aspect, really, really important aspect. On a perhaps a bit of a more disturbing note, this is why I think this is important. Trump just rubber stamped an executive order basically allowing the researchers, big agri, people that are involved in the production of food. He basically rubber stamped a license to do whatever you want with GMOs. It's a bit disturbing, but it doesn't surprise me from a guy that eats fast food all the time. He doesn't have an awareness, I think, a real awareness of what's going into our food. And he sees this as a business opportunity, right? And one of the things that, and again, I'm not here to slam Republicans, but they have never really been on the side of the environment. And I'm not talking about global warming stuff, right? I'm talking about organic. Today in the state of New York, the state of New York just signed into law that nobody can get a philosophical or religious exemption from being vaccinated. That's because you had a whole host of Hasidic Jews in New York City who all got measles because they weren't vaccinated. It doesn't matter, right? We know that measles don't kill people. In fact, it's probably better that you get them but they use that. I'm not saying that's a Republican thing. That's a bipartisan thing. But Republicans used to stand for kind of less involvement with the government, theoretically. And that's generally not been the case. And clearly with what Trump has done with rubber stamping this executive order to say, hey, open Pandora's box, have at it. Let's bring the GMO factor. Let's crank it up. I mean, he's looking at it from a business sense. This is what Republicans do. They look at it from a business sense, a business opportunity. They look at it from an economic standpoint. Hey, if we can get more jobs out of this, if we can encourage this industry, it'll look good on our resume and kind of fits the model. But at the end of the day, people pay a price. People pay a price with their health. People pay a price with, they won't pay a price at the grocery stores because they'll still get their cheap food or cheaper food or cheaper than organic food. But they do pay a price in the long run. And then, of course, big pharma and big medicine is right there to say, hey, we got you. Yeah, you ate all that crappy food, put all that crappy food into your system. Yeah, you've got all these weird, contradictions with your intestines and your digestion. You've got all these issues. Don't worry about it. We got you. Come on over here. Let's get you in the system. And now you're in the big pharma system. And the big pharma system, that's a bear trap. Once you start to get into that big pharma system, man, it's hard to get out. And I see it. I watched my mother go through this, with her hip surgery and, adding on fluids and then having to take these, these pills. I think they're called gabapentin. And then ultimately what they do is they take over the kidney's function in order to flush water and fluids out of the system. So now she needs these pills. She doesn't have these pills. Her kidneys, which have been weakened as a result of all this, don't function as well. So she has more water buildup and more water gain. So now she's in. But again, there's a price to pay, right? And it's not a good price to pay. So what we're trying to do, this is how I see it. With the true node in Cancer, South node in Capricorn, to bring some astrology into this, we're really trying to root into that Cancerian world. And the Cancerian world for us right now, grow your own food. grow a garden, look around. What's going on in your community? What can you do about it? Can you lend a hand? Can you pitch in? You know, when this thing with fluoride popped up on my screen, I thought, well, this is it. This is my opportunity to get involved. I've been, not that I'm apolitical. I mean, I do have some, there's nobody on this planet who isn't political, by the way. Even people who do test politics, I guarantee you, they have some personal point of view that ricochets and echoes into the political chamber. Okay, just the way it is. So even if somebody's an anarchist, they still have points of view that can be politically interpreted. And at the end of the day, we're in a system, right? We're in a system, and that system is guided and governed, for better or worse, by the politics of our times. So we've got to figure out where we are in that system. But for me personally, I was, not into, it's like screw politics and screw everything that goes along with politics. But this opportunity came up to get involved with the fluoride and getting the fluoride out of the water here. And luckily I've been able to work with some very, very dedicated people to that end. And that's been really great. And it's an opportunity for me to, because I get up here and I talk a lot. But if I don't do something, if I'm not involved, my words have less merit, less gravitas. So I hope that by the end of today's show, after listening to Brian for a little bit, and after meeting Sam and listening to Sam, that you may be inspired in your own way to go out and do what you do. And some of you are already doing that. And one of the things that I'm sure Sam and I will spend some time talking about is fluoride. And that is one of the issues that is a winnable issue. And we'll talk about why it's important, number one, from a personal perspective or a health perspective. And number two, why it's important from a position of the community, locality, empowerment, and beginning to take some of that back for us and restricting some of the just, box checking that goes on in those areas. I just checked the box. It's been interesting to see this from a local standpoint and what local politicians do. In many cases, they're just not as informed. And if they are informed and they're negligent, then that's a whole other discussion to have. So let me see who's in the chat room today and see what's going on, see what we've got here. Let's see, we got Jenny. Hi, Jenny. There's Tanya, Cato. Hi, Joe. Astrofly in Dubai. What's happening? Hey, Jennifer, haven't seen you for a while. Nice to see you. There's Paulette. Hi, Paulette. Jessica got she got the notification. There's Judy and FUP77. Who else? I had mumps, measles, chickenpox, scarlet fever. Still living thanks to my mom. Hi, Christine. No politics is here to divert us from our purpose. Listen, politics is a world system. It's a world system, right? It's what it is. But we're in this, and we're in this world. We don't have to be of this world, but we're in this world. So our goal is, at this point in time, to protect our bodies, our lives, our environments, to protect our children, and to protect values that I think are really important and in some ways sacred to us. And if we have to do it politically, which is what we're doing here to get the fluoride out of the water, so be it, right? That's part of the system. Of course, you can get water filters and you could go that route. That's fine. That's fine. But, there really should be no reason why we need to have fluoride in our water. That's just a complete and utter scam in a lot of ways. And in fact, more than a scam, it's not even an informed scam. It's not even an informed scam at all. We're being medicated in our water supply without our informed consent. So let's see, what do we have going on in the chat room? What else is going on? There's Jan. Oh, you will not force the system to protect you. I agree. Listen, I agree. I'm not debating you on that. I am not. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to limit that in my own way, right? And so on a local level, so if you look at if you look at the fourth turning material, and basically where we are in the fourth turning is winter in America, and to some extent winter globally. And we're moving into a phase where the seeds for something new are being planted and worked on. Like Heather and I were talking about how when she moved to that small town in Colorado, and more people are moving in that direction, in that area, because they want to have kind of more of a semblance of control in their environment. And one of the things that that Strauss and Howe, who are the authors, the co-authors of The Fourth Turning, one of the things they talk about is they talk about how the movement is going to be more local. So that's why we're doing this show today, and hopefully you can wrap your arms around that. I agree with you completely about government as a model of overall tyranny. But what we're here today do today is talk about how you can actually feel like you're a functioning organelle in your own system, work with other people, and make an impact. All right, so let me bring Brian on. Looks like he's here now. So let me bring him into the show. And there he is. And there's Brian. There's his picture. And I'm going to make you. Hey, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, let me just make a few adjustments here. And I'm going to promote you to a panelist. You're getting an upgrade, which is great. And then once I do that, let's see, where are you? You're supposed to be a panelist now. Come on now, where'd you go? Oh, I lost you. You got to come back. Click that link again. Let's bring you back in here. There you are. Okay, now you're a panelist, and I'm going to allow America to see your face, the world to see your face. And so I just have to, let's see, allow for video. There you are. What's happening, man?
Oh, just getting ready for today.
All right, well, it's more than ready. It's go time. Oh, that's not good. So welcome to the show, Brian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for having me.
So just to give people some background, Brian started to follow some of my work and got involved. And then he got involved with tangentially with our anti-fluoride operation here in Fredericksburg. So Brian's helped us out a little bit on the financial side, and it's been really, really helpful. And then as I got to know Brian a little bit more, he's got his own thing, which is Texas Caregivers, and he's morphing that into something new. And of course, you can see his cap right there, and he's got his Texas Caregiver image and symbol on his cap. So Brian, what I wanted to do is I wanted to just kind of get into your backstory. I know a little bit about it, and I think it's really important because often people have an event that happens in their lives, and it's like, okay, well, what can I learn from this, and how can I build on this event? And in these events, which at times often seem either tragic or difficult, they can be really super empowering. So let's go back in time and let's retrace kind of how you got here.
All right. Well, about 5 years ago, I noticed that my father was acting kind of strange, and we later found out that he was diagnosed with dementia. And then while I was helping my mother with my father, about 2 years later, she passed away from brain cancer. Totally came out of nowhere, wasn't expecting it. So then I had to deal with her funeral, and while still taking care of my father, who had dementia, which was slowly getting worse and worse. And then I reached a point where I couldn't take care of him by myself anymore. So I had to take him to memory care. But I felt, and then he later passed away last September. And
so before you move on, I think it's really important to note that you're the only child of that marriage. So there was nobody else to help out, or you didn't have any other siblings. All that responsibility fell on your shoulders, right?
That is correct. Yes,
Okay,
I had to make the decisions because no one else was available to make those decisions.
right. Yeah. Okay. Just want to give people kind of some more background as to how you
Mhm.
how you got there. Okay, so keep on going. You've got a father. You've just lost your mom, which is really traumatic. That's number one. And
Mhm.
then now you've got a father who's declining into dementia. Where do you go from there?
Well, I became very frustrated because I felt like I didn't know of anybody else in my similar situation, and it seemed like that I was having to scramble to try to find information that wasn't publicized. That I thought, man, I really need some help dealing with this, because part of with dementia, one of the symptoms is unpredictable behavior. That can be stressful. Just when you think things are quiet, something happens, and you have no warning. There's wandering, or sometimes people with dementia will wander off. Just several other symptoms that you can, find out about from like the Alzheimer's Association. But all these resources, I mean, I thought to myself, I need help, and I don't know where to go, and nobody else knows. Nobody, I don't know anybody who can help me. So I made a promise to myself that if I get through this, caregiver journey is what I call it, because I didn't ask for it. It was like, here, there you go. You're kind of in it.
Right.
And I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna tell if I find out where to go to get help, I'm gonna make it my life's mission to tell other caregivers, not just elder care caregivers, but um, you know, all sorts of caregivers, that this is where you can go to get to find out the resources to get the help you need, so you can deal with this situation, and still have a life,
Right.
still have something close to a life as possible. So that's what I that's what I that's my goal. That's why I didn't find my purpose. I felt like I really didn't find my purpose in life until this happened to me. And
Hmm.
I feel like moving forward, that's my mission, is to tell other people who, I mean, sooner or later everybody's going to be a caregiver at some
Right.
point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you found yourself in this maze,
Yes.
and dealing with the needs of a parent who's in serious decline, and you dealing with agencies, government or otherwise, and that's got to be really really difficult on just a personal level. So, do you have any examples or stories that you encountered along the way that were either shocking or alarming, or really kind of catalytic and set, like to the effect that, okay, I just found this out and this is going to be one of the things I really want to work on as a result of having to go through all this alone and without any Sherpas, right? Any events or any experiences that you want to share?
There's two events. The first event happened when my mother took a trip to Europe, and she came back, and my dad didn't recognize her, and so he called the after 50 years of marriage, he called the police to get, well, he didn't recognize her, so that brought
So you
in,
call the police because you didn't recognize her. That's pretty dramatic, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And then at that point, they contacted Adult Protective Services. So I thought, oh, great. I've got the state involved in my life now. I try to keep the state out of my life as much as possible, but
Right.
and so I have a caseworker that's going to check up on my father, which is understandable. But make, then I had to start proving to them, what steps am I taking to ensure his safety and well-being. And so then, and then the second, which leads into the second incident I had, where I was driving in a car and my father was in the passenger side, and we came at a stoplight, and out of nowhere, he decides to get out of the car on me. So I had to put the car in park, get out of the car, get him back in the car, and get in the car before the light changed. And when that happened to me, I thought, wow, not only did he jeopardize his life, he jeopardized my life too. And so I said, I can't live like this. So at that point, I decided, okay, because I have to deal with Adult Protective Services, I can't do this by myself. I need help. And so I decided that he needed to be moved out of his house and into a memory care facility where he could get 24-hour supervision.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, about a year and a half later, my father lived outside of Houston, and then he got his house would eventually get flooded from Hurricane Harvey.
Oh, wow.
So it all worked out. I don't know if it was the universe telling me to get him out of that house and into a safer location, which did not experience any, hurricane weather. So
Right.
it kind of took that happening, but it eventually did work out. So I'm grateful that, looking back, that happened, because he would have, he may have tried to fight me. Like if I would have told him, hey Dad, we got to go, there's a hurricane, and he might have wanted to stay, and then it could have gotten not good.
Right.
So,
right. So one of the things that you shared with me, again, this kind of blew my mind, because I haven't had to go down this path, but when you put your father in that home, that you had to, he couldn't really take care of his bodily functions. So you basically had to buy adult diapers for him, right? I mean, this was right. This was a kind of a big deal.
Yes, toward the end. And see, this is something when memory care was very expensive, and I was kind of upset that they told me, you have to provide wipes and diapers.
Wipes.
That's something we don't provide. And I thought, well, okay. So
most people think I'm paying this money. You would think that you would be able to provide this.
Yes,
that's not the case.
No, and even, I mean, if they would have tacked it on as an additional fee, so I wouldn't have to go out and get the wipes myself and bring them in, that they couldn't had some private contractor order the wipes and have them delivered.
Right.
And but I didn't want to move him because he was already established there. And I thought moving him to try to find another place, he was there, he was safe. I mean, so I felt like, well, this is what we got to deal with until something changes. So but that experience caused me to realize that, hey, because of the aging baby boomer population, there is going to be a demand for these types of products, like the diapers and the wipes and the non-bathing shampoo and cleaning products. So that's what kind of set me off in that path to open an online store where people can order that stuff online if they have someone they have to take care of in their house.
Right. So again, the reason I brought that up is because there was a problem and you have found a solution, right? You were burdened by this idea. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Why do we have to do this? I'm paying you money. Mm-hmm. And what you did is like, okay, I'm going to create an online store. And if you're going through something like this, these are the things that you need. You can get them all right here, get them drop shipped to where they need to be. So this is what I'm talking about. This is where people go through, some really difficult circumstances and trials in their lives. But what you're choosing to do is make people's lives easier and better as a result of what you've gone through. I think that's really important. What are some of the other things that people can get in your store, or some of the the code or the insights that you can provide through your service that other people might really benefit from?
Well, I have created a caregiver elder care caregiver tips list, which is on my website. And there are 6 things that I found out through my 5-year caregiver journey that I'd like to share with other people so that they know, so that they're somewhat prepared when this happens and just not caught off guard.
Right.
The first tip is look for an adult day center in your area. And if you use a search engine, whichever search engine you choose, and just type in the name of your city and or state, and then adult day center, you can find a place where you can take someone, get your person you're taking care of out of the house so that you've got time for yourself. Right. The second tip is to look up respite programs. And I had no idea about any of this. I used to think respite was hospice, and that's 2 totally different things. Respite is programs put on by the state or nonprofit organizations where caregivers can get time for themselves to get away and recharge their batteries, even if it's for a couple of hours.
Right.
And so the same thing, use the search engine, type in the name of your state or city and respite and see what pops up. And the third thing I wanted to say for our United States viewers is that there is an organization called the Area Agency on Aging. And believe it or not, every state has an office, and all you can do, and if you need help, it's their job, but I think they need to do more to publicize what they do. And so you just go into a search engine and type in the name of your state and Area Agency on Aging, and you should get directed to a place where you can get help with that. Mm-hmm. The fourth tip is to contact an elder law attorney for powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney, and wills. See, this is how life threw me a curveball. My mom and we were so focused on my father's dementia, and we got his paperwork taken care of. We didn't realize that out of the blue, 2 years later, my mom would pass away. We were so focused on my dad that we took the eye off the ball with my mom, and that came out of nowhere. So it was a good thing that we had done the preparatory work for our family to get that legal paperwork in order, so that when it came time, it was easier for me to probate her will when I was dealing with him. And then it's also easier for me to probate my father's will. Right. The fifth tip in this experience is to make sure that your bank accounts and your investment accounts list beneficiaries, and that way you can avoid probate. So I wasn't caught when it came time to pay for funerals and expenses, because it was paid on death and I was listed as a beneficiary. I didn't have to wait around for cash to pay bills. Right. So that was a big deal.
This is all on your website. All these steps are on your website, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, this is not really sexy stuff, right? No. People don't always want to deal with this. They don't want to, wrap their heads around. But these are really essential and important pieces that we need to understand, just from kind of a level of functionality, because we're all beginning to, evolve, get older, and clearly our parents are as well. Now, I wanted to ask you from a personal standpoint, how has this changed you? How is getting involved in creating your website, creating your Facebook page, and providing some information and a store for people? How does this change your life?
I feel it has improved my life because I am a sole proprietor and I work for myself, and I feel like what I'm doing is valuable and meaningful. And before, I had jobs where I worked for a company and I was just punching the time clock. I was doing the job, but I didn't feel inspired. I mean,
Right.
I worked hard, but I feel like this is something that I can use my creativity. I can use my past experience, all these experience with this issue. And I feel like it's made me, and it's made me, it's humbled me,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's made me better. And
Right.
I think I'm a better human being, a more patient human being, a more kind and understanding human being because of these experiences.
Yeah. And, I think it's also opened you up to a larger part of the world too, right? More people, more communities, other groups. When you
Yes.
came up here a couple months ago and were part of our video showing on the anti-fluoride stuff, you
Mhm.
were seeking out another group here that was dealing with vets and trying to connect with them. So it's opened up your world, right? Not just your own personal growth, which is important, but your connection to the world at large.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's really, really cool. So, all right. So tell people about your website. It's texascaregivers.org. Is that correct? Or
Uh,
.com?
it's texascaregiver.com.
.com. Okay.
Yes.
And now
And
you've also started a new website as well, right? And that's
yes, since I am in Texas and I was focused on Texas, I thought to myself, you know, this is really a worldwide issue. Aging is a worldwide issue. So I thought, why not expand the concept and make it global
mhm,
and reach more people, help more people, and do more good. So I said, okay, let's call it a world caregiver network.
right.
Of just caregivers around the world getting the help they need in their respective areas. And so I said, well, I'm going to do that. So I've started to kind of expand the concept. And a lot of times when I find information, um, I would find information for other states and other countries. And I thought, well, I'm finding this other stuff. I should, at least organize it so that other people who don't live in Texas can benefit from it.
Right.
So that kind of started the World Caregiver Network.
That's great. And so is there a website for that as well?
Yes, website is worldcaregivernetwork.com.
World Care. And you also have Facebook pages for both. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Great. And any other like salient points or words of wisdom that you want to share with people, either from your perspective as kind of a caregiver who's found purpose in life, or somebody who might be going through kind of what you went through? Anything else you want to share with people?
I heard a statistic that a lot of primary caregivers actually pass away before the person that they take care of, and that statistic held true with my family and my mother. And
Interesting.
so I would say, don't try to do it all yourself. There are different programs, like I've heard that there's seniors helping seniors. That's a program. If you can't find someone to volunteer to help you, you can try to a home health aide, certified nursing assistant, to help you if the respite programs aren't long enough. So because you still have to, like self-care. I know that was the topic you discussed throughout this week. You have to take care of yourself, because if you let yourself go, you're not going to be able to take care of somebody else. And
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. And sorry to mean to cut you off, but I think this is something that we can get in practice with now, right? That we do the things now in our lives to take care of ourselves. So when we do come up against this tsunami that will hit us at some point in time, we've already got good self-care habits and patterns down in our life so that we can continue to make sure that we take care of ourselves during these times of stress. So that's one of the reasons why I was bringing this up this week. And that's a great point. Anything else you want to share before we say goodbye today and send you back off into your world of service there, Brian?
No, I think we've given everyone a good starting point, and then if they feel they need more information, they know where to go, and they'll have a place to find the information.
Great. So what I'll do is I'll make sure the links to your websites are in the information box. So if anybody's out here and you're listening and you need some information or you need some resource help or assistance, Brian will help you out. And again, I just really, in conjunction with that, which is actually something that's really valuable for people, I just wanted to bring you on here, say thank you, because you're somebody who said, you know what, I experienced some really difficult dynamics with my parents, and I want to make sure other people don't have to go through what I went through, or at least not to the extent. So you saw a problem, you saw some challenges, and you said, I'm going to take this on. So thanks for doing that from one human to another, and I hope you continue to do your work, Brian, and can be of assistance to other people. Congratulations, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, take good care.
Okay, bye.
That was Brian Mertz from TexasCaregivers.com and World Caregiver, TexasCaregiver.com and WorldCaregiver.com. And, again, it's not a sexy issue. It's not, we're not dealing with like deep mythologies here. We're not dealing with, quantum realities. We're not going down the rabbit hole with a flashlight. And that's part of our lives. These things are part of our daily lives. They're part of our lives that are evolving. And again, I just wanted to emphasize and focus that Brian was somebody who, instead of, folding or saying, fuck this, or he decided that I want to make other people's lives easier and better. That's the focus of today's show. This is what I want to bring to the table today. So in about 7 minutes, we're going to have Sam Brannon come on from Fluoride Free San Marcos and other. Sam's a really interesting cat. You're going to love Sam. You're going to love his passion. You're going to love his story. And this is where we really pull up the hood and look at, what we can do on, again, a local level. This is where the action is. And I know politics stinks. And I know government stinks. And I've been anti-government to a large extent, anti-politics for a long period of time. But from an astrological standpoint, we cannot get out of this right now. Right? We're dealing with Pluto and Capricorn. And we've been dealing with Pluto and Capricorn since 2009. And that's the transformation of governments and corporations, oligarchs and hierarchies, right? This is a really important time for who we are and where we are. And the beautiful thing about astrology is that the opposite sign of the sign that we're experiencing something with in a very kind of intense fashion is a really, really important clue to that dynamic. So if we're going through something in Pluto and Capricorn, or Saturn and Capricorn, or in this case, even the true node in Capricorn, what's the opposite sign? It's Cancer. The antidote to what we're experiencing with this Pluto and Capricorn, where these massive forces, these massive governmental and corporocratic forces are being welded and joined at the hip. The antidote to that is on the other side of that equation. It has to do with the sign of Cancer. And so what is Cancer? It is local. It is about bonding. It is about growing. It's about nurturing. It's about supporting. It's about empathy. It's about protecting. And where we are from a cultural standpoint, like Pluto's going to go into Aquarius. Saturn's going to go into Aquarius. And we're going to be morphing and moving into this Aquarian model, okay? This is why the call to socialism is having such a loud and reverberating, in some ways, message on, of course, the corporations are going to support it because they have their own version of corporate socialism. Oh, that's a new one, isn't it? Yeah. that's going to be part of this new model. It'll be the corporate socialist model. If you ever want to check out a version of what this looks like, watch the movie Rollerball. Watch Rollerball, not the remake, but the original with James Caan, because that's exactly the model of the future that we're talking about here. It's corporate socialism. However, that model is not baked in. It's not baked in stone, right? It's not baked in clay yet. We have the ability to morph, and we have the ability to move our intention into areas that matter and mean something to us. And that has to do with really fundamental things like the food that we eat, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, and even in some ways, the transmissions of the waves that information is distributed on. And that gets into 5G, and maybe we'll talk to Sam a little bit about 5G. And these are the front lines of our experience, boys and girls. And if you can't begin to think about that and see that as an antidote to what's happening politically, you're not quite getting the message. And it's a time of personal responsibility and communal responsibility. This is my clarion call, and this is a way for us to not feel so either downcast, depressed, or defeated. You know, we have a choice in the world that we want to live in, and it starts with you every day, what you put in your body, what you put in your mind, what you put in your hearts, and then it extends outwards. And that's really where it's at. That is the anima mundi, right? That is the anima mundi of our experience. All right, let me check in with you guys in the chat room. Oh, looks like Sam is on board here. Let me bring Sam in. Let's get this party started. Let's click Sam. Let's bring him on. Hey Sam, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Beautiful. You're going to have to talk up a little bit. You're a little low on your end.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So I'm gonna promote you to being a panelist. So you're getting an upgrade, and I'm going to be able to activate some video for you now, so we get to see you. So let me.
Okay.
Let me do that. And here we go. Give me one sec. So you've got, let me undo this one more time. Allow panelists to start video. So we should be able to see you, Sam.
What do you think? Can you?
There's an icon with a camera. Sometimes you have to click on.
Okay. Let me try again here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're good, man. But I've given you permission to come in and
okay, start video.
There you are.
Woo! How's that?
Well, hey, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to the party.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So just make sure we get a nice loud level on your voice, because you're gonna have a lot to say. And I'm sure on their end we'll be able to turn their volume up as well. So welcome.
Okay.
And I gave you a bit of an introduction at the start of the show, but let me just do a little backstory here. I met Sam through our involvement here in Fredericksburg with stopping fluoridation in this town. And so we knew that Sam Marcos had accomplished this. So Sam was one of the first people we reached out to. And Sam was totally great, got rolled up his sleeves, got involved, has been really generous with his time and his insights. And so that's how Sam and I got connected, got to know each other a little bit. And what I want to do now is I want to talk about you and your evolution and your story, which I know a little bit about, but I think it's an interesting one. So I'd love for you to just share that with people and kind of how you got to where you are today, which is, really invested in your community. So let's go back in time and rewind and unfold that for these folks.
Wow. Okay. So, I can give probably a 5-minute version of this or a 3-day version of this.
Listen, how about maybe about a 10-minute version? How's that?
Yeah. So we'll go back to the late 90s. and I was having a conversation with some friends, and they were giving me a certain version of the world as they saw it. And I was one of those people that I was never politically involved because I never believed that the politicians were talking to me, and it just nothing. That conversation never really resonated with me. So I was always kind of hanging in the back. I knew government was corrupt. I knew they were inept. But the version that was being shared with me is they actually mean me harm. And there are some very bad powers that are using this structure of government to do bad things against us. And my response is, you guys are nuts. And my friend, the thing she said to me, she looked me straight in the eyes and she says, inform yourself. That's where she left it. And I was like, well, okay, I think I will.
So they were giving you the red pills, but you weren't ready yet, right?
Well, no, I mean, I was a very conventional guy, I suppose. I grew up kind of suburb country, whatever, and, went to University of Texas and got my finance degree, and I was working in the corporate world. And, although we see things going on out in the world, it's like, it's working for me. And everything was working, I was being successful and all that stuff. And then 9/11 happened. And, that's a big event for everybody. And I happened to have been in a car going down to a sales call in Austin from Dallas when that was going on. And, it just, like everybody else, it blew me away. But, keep in mind that was just 2 or 3 years after that conversation. I was trying to open up and, listen to narratives that I haven't listened to before. And I started listening to the conspiracy narrative on the 9/11 thing, and it was all over the place. I mean, it was a wide variability in what you were hearing, but in a fairly short amount of months, that variability came down, and it became to be, a pretty consistent narrative. And then the 2004 9/11 Commission report came out, and I messed up and I read it. And, that did not reflect anything that we all experienced on that day. So that was the big trigger to me. I was waiting for it to come out, and that was the big trigger to me that what they tell us and what really exists are two pretty different things.
Two different realities, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that caused me to investigate further. In the meantime, I'm moving up in the corporate world. And, the last job I had in the corporate world was I left in 2005. So I started putting more time into wanting to understand what's really going on. And my career became less and less important to me. And, I was doing good, but I just didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to have greater understanding. So I quit working, and I broke up with my girlfriend, got rid of a couple of houses and most of what I owned. And I just wanted to go travel for a little bit and free up my mind. And in the process of that, I had a lot of free time to read and investigate things. And, here's long story short. I was out of the country for 4 years traveling around, being a good vagabond and, a good hippie and all that stuff. And I decided that when I got back to the US, whenever that was, that I was going to get involved in whatever was going on wherever I wound up. And I wound up here in San Marcos, and I started off, I got tricked into going to the county government and watching them. And, that got me interested in local politics in some would argue an unhealthy way.
So this is interesting because you're kind of bringing, I don't want to call it a conspiratorial mindset, but you bring kind of a truth mindset, right, to local government. And that's a really interesting dynamic because you've got a really wide aperture and you're coming into this really narrow kind of funnel. What was that like for you?
Well, I saw the way you danced around the word conspiratorial. That sounds like a pretty big thing. I prefer to call it skepticism.
Right.
I'm skeptical. I'm looking at the news today. I'm skeptical about who blew up that Iranian tanker. You got to be skeptical because, especially in these last couple of years, all we've seen is just how big the lies can be. So, yeah, I got it sort of with the global thing, and I came to the realization that we can care and we can communicate on these issues, but we have limited ability to impact it. What I found out is on this local stuff, I don't have to post a meme about John Bolton. I can go down to commissioner's court and look these guys in the eye, right?
Right.
And the more, the first time I went to commissioner's court, I didn't know anything they were talking about, but I knew two of them up there were lying to me. And that was enough to make me go, back.
Right.
And we've now, we're talking, 9 years later, they're both out of office here now. One of them was really quick and the other one we just got rid of in 2018. But, what I found is we can impact things at the local level, because we see these guys at HEB, we see them at church, and we see them, everywhere we go, and they have to look us in the eyes, so it's a very different dynamic. And I think local, that's where all the action is that you're really going to be able to have an impact on. So that's why I got interested in it. Is that a fair overview, Robert?
I think it's a pretty fair overview. And okay. the real sort of skeleton key to all this was the fluoride issue. And that's where you really put a big footprint in this whole scenario. So let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, so when we started on that, I guess it was spring of 2013, a friend of mine, brought a stack of papers and set them in my hand. And she goes, "Read this." I'm like, "What is this?" And she goes, "It's about fluoride." I'm like, "Well, I grew up thinking fluoride was good. I've heard other things. I haven't really looked at it. I'll look at these papers." So I read them, and it was a short stack, And I saw her a few days later, and I said, "Well, if this is true, then we've got some problems on our hands that we should probably take a look at."
So we're talking about the medical, scientific side of things, where fluoride creates a whole lot of problems for our bodies.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I was. It was scientific, and basically it was articles about scientific papers is what I was.
Right.
And so we put together a little study group because I wanted to know, if we were going to invest time in this, how confident were we that there was a problem? So we put together 6 or 8 people, and we began to look at the issue. We had a larger organization that we had built, for local political activity. And once the study group decided that, we wanted to put some effort behind it, we put it in front of the larger group of about 40 or 50 people. And it took a couple of months. We didn't want to push them. We kind of soft-sold it and just consistently went in with information. And then 3 or 4 months later, that organization voted unanimously to, do what it took to stop the fluoridation program here. So the first thing we did is issued a resolution. We took it down to city council and read it. And we started, putting together people that cared about this. And so that was like March of 2013. And then, or February. And then, we went the political route on it for about 1.5 years, because to us, when you get into the fluoridation materials and you start to really understand the science and, that fluoride is a neurotoxin, and you find out all the different health effects on it, to me, it looked like a slam dunk. I said, well, once we start taking this forward to the city council, probably take us 3 or 5 months to get them.
Right. They'll get it. They'll figure it out. Right. They'll say, "Thank you very much. We had no idea that it was really that bad for us." And then,
oh my gosh, we were a little optimistic. So we went through the pace with the city council for about 1.5 years. And we got every sort of duck and ignore, and we'll listen to that. Yeah, we might do something, and it just kept dragging on and on. And then I had a friend out of Houston that was following us on Facebook, and there's a real good network of local activists in the state of Texas, a solid network. And this guy called me up, and he goes, "You guys need to do a city charter amendment." And I'm like, "What is that?" And so he explained to me that every city has a city charter. And it's sort of like the Constitution. It gives them certain powers, takes away certain powers, and that we as citizens have the ability to put up an amendment to that city charter by going through a petitioning process. And so we decided, the law is on our side if we do it this way. And so we did it that way, and we were successful in our petitioning, and we presented the petition to the city. It ultimately got put on the ballot in November 2015.
But San Marcos was not playing nice. They were not just going to say, "Hey, good job, guys. You know, you're good citizens. Thanks. Yeah. We'll just put this right to the top of our list." They were pushing back.
Oh, they were pushing
every
back
step of the way, right?
Yeah, they were dragging their feet, and the city attorney and the city manager, and they were doing everything they could to make it go away. So we handed in our petition. I think it was April of 2015, and all they're required by law at that point to validate that those were original signatures and not stamps and not one person signing them all, and count them. That's what the city is obligated to do by the state. And then if we meet both of those criteria, it gets put on the ballot. And they didn't want to put it on the ballot. And they nullified our petition because they said we didn't meet their specifications, which was a bogus argument. They continued to not put it on the ballot throughout that summer. And we finally had our attorney write a demand letter saying, well, if you don't follow the state law, we have no option other than to sue you. And I think that was in July of 2015. And the very next day after they received that demand letter, they filed suit against us.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, and it was a 17-page lawsuit, which tells me it was sitting on the shelf.
And this is kind of confirming like your bias against government too, right?
People wonder why I hate government.
Right. Exactly. There it is.
And it was a legal maneuver. And I know what happened when they realized they were getting a petition. They called the Texas Municipal League and said, how do we fight this? And they gave them, their list of how a good city attorney would fight citizens trying to, exercise their First Amendment. And they responded with that. We wound up winning in court, and the 22nd District Court. They immediately appealed so that they wouldn't have to put it on the ballot.
Right.
And so we got an expedited appeals court in August that told them they had to put it on the ballot, and they did it with 1 day left. They timed it. Basically, they knew they weren't going to win. They timed it to limit our ability to run a campaign, to keep it down to as short as window as possible.
Right. And they're running out the clock. Yeah.
And so we kind of saw that coming. And so you can't really start a campaign until you're on the ballot. So we couldn't really start it until the end of August, early September. But we did the big steps that we had to do to be organized and be able to make a quick turn on it. So yeah, we had about a 5-week campaign window, and we took the vote with 61%. So everything worked out. But yeah, it was a fight. So
I just want to just take a moment here to get people to understand this process, because Sam and a group of people decided that they wanted to make a change, and they faced some odds and some really entrenched attitudes, and it happened. And it is not easy, right? Like if you look at what Austin has been doing for years, trying to get the fluoride out of the water, and they just keep running into walls all the time. So in order for Sam and his group to do what they did, it's significant. It's really significant. And then as kind of a ripple effect, 2 other areas, Buda and Kyle, both had fluoride removed from their water as well. They stopped the fluoridation process. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the way the water systems here work is the city of San Marcos has a third party, the Guadalupe, GBRA, Guadalupe, Brazos River Authority, something like that. We buy the water from them out of New Braunfels. They used to fluoridate it at the San Marcos water systems plant. And then we would get the water, and then they'd run it up the freeway and the pipeline to City of Kyle, City of Buda, and a couple of small water people out there. So they were actually fluoridating. San Marcos is roughly 50,000 people. They were fluoridating for 100,000 roughly. And so when we stopped that program here, we also, we didn't even know it at the time, we stopped it in Kyle, the City of Kyle, the City of Buda, and those other water systems. And since then, I think it was a few months after, I think it was early 2016, the city of Kyle, the city council took it upon themselves to pass a resolution or an ordinance that they were not going to renew the fluoridation system there. Buda went a different route. In late 2016, they tried to sneak a new fluoridation equipment and to restart the fluoridation program in right about Christmas time, 2016. And I got a phone call from one of the city council members, said, hey, you know, I think fluoride's bad, but we've got this thing going on and they want to reinstitute. Can you come talk to us? So I went down, I think it was the day, like the meeting right after Christmas, the one right before, and gave them 3 minutes on why it was a bad idea. And there were 4 or 5 people in the audience that were down there to view this. And so we got together and we kind of saw the stone faces on the city council. I'm like, you guys are going to have to fight for this. And so we got them organized, and they prevented the city of Buda from re-implementing the program. And then they got it on the ballot also. It wasn't a city charter amendment. They did it as an ordinance, but they got it on the ballot for 2017, November 2017. And they voted, I think it was 67% or 70% not to fluoridate in Buda. So yeah, there were some upstream beneficiaries, and you know, in both of those cities, they've got it pretty well under control as well.
Right. It's an absolutely great story, and like I said, it's inspired us. You were the person that turned us onto the idea about amending the city charter, and that's exactly what we did. So kind of a bit of an aside here. I think this is going to lead us into our next topic of conversation. You know, when you and I were talking this morning or yesterday, we talked a little bit about Laura Presley. And she was somebody who's been involved in trying to get the fluoride out of Austin, as well as running a race for a council member in Austin, right? And Laura, her big thing now is about voter fraud and dealing with this strange kind of black magic that goes on behind the scenes with votes. And she told me a story that you guys had people in the precinct when the votes were coming in. Is that right? That you were actually viewing the tabulation, and there was some weird shadowy figure kind of in there, and then maybe noticed that you guys were watching what was going on, and then didn't come back. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I'm not sure exactly which instance she's talking about. I've been in Central Count, I think 5 times on election night. The first time we had anybody in Central Count was the night of our fluoride election in 2015. Nobody ever showed up there before. And I think that that's why we got a good, clean vote that election. They weren't expecting somebody to be down there watching them, and they kind of freaked. We have evidence in the electronic voting. We use the HARP system, and there is a study by the state of California. They had some computer scientists come in and look at the source code of the exact same equipment that we use here in Hays County, and it's pretty widespread across Texas. And they found, I think it was 46 potential hack scenarios in that system. They were looking at the source code, and they identified one, I think it was number 26, called a mobile ballot box error. And we consistently have those in elections here in Hays County. Almost every election that I've sat in Central Count, they have those. And that's a signal, according to this report, that the election might have had some data inserted into it that were changing votes. And there's a certain way that's supposed to be processed at election time. We're not allowed to impact how they do it, but we can ask questions. We do take notes. I've been in there, like say 5 or 6 times, and they run that process a little bit differently every time. You know,
interesting.
And they handle that error a little bit differently every time. So, you know, in November 2015, it didn't come up. In November 2017, it didn't come up, which is, I think, why Buda won. You know, I think if they're rigging them, and we have some evidence they are, that I don't think they would allow that to pass, but we're doing a pretty good job in Central Count. But yeah, it's I know why she's concerned about the elections equipment. Yeah, Laura Presley, she's a go-getter. She's a fighter.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Just to let people know, Laura's story was that she went up against a new guy, just right on the scene, in a district that really didn't reflect his demographic, and he wound up winning the election. And Laura challenged the results, and every step of the way, every court basically said, "You're out of here. This didn't happen. And by the way, you've got a massive fine you got to pay now." And she took this.
I know they were sanctioning her and the attorney for trying to defend their rights.
That's right.
It's crazy.
That's right.
Crazy.
That's right. And they do this because other people are watching, and they don't want other people to do this. To say, here's the big baseball bat you're going to have to deal with if you do this, right? Well, Laura, it's going to cost you money and maybe your marriage or whatever, right? But Laura is such a bulldog. She took it all the way to the state Supreme Court and won, and had to get there. And anyway, she's a really interesting character and has a really powerful story to tell around this idea of voting and voter fraud. I want to bring this back to you. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because you were a guy that did get into that big picture. You looked into things deeply and you said, look, what we're dealing with, this story, this narrative, what the world is given to us is not really what it is. And there are forces and powers behind the scenes that are creating a theater that we don't really understand. But if we look deep enough, we'll begin to see what they're up to. And that didn't paralyze you. And in actuality, what it did is it actually galvanized you and put you in action at this local level. And I think that's a really unique process. And I just want to just ask you how that's changed your life and how you get up every day and find purpose and meaning and, bringing your broad awareness into more localized kind of perspectives.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It didn't paralyze me, right? Because a lot of people, when we go through this increasing our awareness to how things really go, a lot of people fall into, I call it the valley of despair, right? Right. You realize how much is going on and how big it is and how am I going to fix this? And I don't know, and I can't impact this, and it's all gone mad. And a lot of people they look away from it because when they look at it, that's how that's the response that they feel inside. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, there's all kinds of things out there I can't affect, but I think I can affect certain things, and, my sphere, if it's this big, I can affect everything in here. And then, if we do it right, then we can continue to grow that sphere, which what you find out is if just through showing up, that sphere continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, we were at it, I guess I was at it 5 years here before we got into that campaign for fluoride. So everything that I did in the years prior to that was kind of leading up to that. And now with that having been behind us, my sphere is much bigger now because, people understand that, okay, well, Sam Brannon and his team went and did this, and so now we've got more people watching and we have even more impact. So yeah, it went from, my valley of despair was relatively short because I'm really not that kind of guy. I understand other people, respond differently. But when I came out of it, I was like, well, I'll get involved in something. I don't know what, but I'm going to start changing something, the things that I can move, start moving it back the other way and find out how many people agree. And it turns out a lot of people want to do something. And so I think what we showed here locally and then Kyle and Buda and now out in Fredericksburg is that, for those people that do feel the need to do something, we've got some tools and we've got some track record that shows it can really be done.
So this is a personal question. When people go down the rabbit hole and they start to see this kind of overwhelming evidence that things aren't what they really appear to be, they can get paralytic or put their head in the sand. What do you think it is inside of you that said, I'm going to do something about this? Have you ever examined that?
I think it was the way I was raised. People in my family have never felt a minute of victimhood. We just haven't. That's not the way I was raised. My mother wasn't raised that way. My father wasn't raised that way. My mother was raised by a single mother with 5 daughters in the Great Depression. All right. So you go through that and it builds a certain character about you. It's like, well, whatever it is we have to do, we just have to do it. And so, me and my sisters were raised that, hey, whatever it is you need to do, you're fully capable. Nobody's more capable. Nobody's more entitled. Whatever you want to do, just go do it. So I've always kind of had that in me. And I feel very fortunate to have been raised that way. I mean, it's just, who's bigger than we are, right?
Right. Second nature. Well, that gets into the spiritual kind of aspect of this, which I think is really, really important. When you get into who's bigger than we are, and this expansive nature, if you want to call it God, or you want to call it, prime creator, whatever you want to call it, that's that thing that lives inside of us. That if we can tap into that, and all of a sudden we're moving mountains. What was, when you were involved in the fluoride stuff, what was that like for you on a spiritual level? Like, man, I'm tapping into something here, and it feels like, there are hands that are kind of moving what I'm doing a little bit.
Yeah. So, I went through my spiritual phase of growth somewhat before I left the country for those 4 years. And then, my set of experiences while I was outside of the country, it just kind of like blew it wide open. So, I have, I say this with some degree of holding a little bit back. I don't have any fears about anything. And I say that knowing that, probably some, but I don't. So I can go into any room, any situation, anywhere, and deal with what is to be dealt with. And that's, again, just kind of me, but the spiritual aspect of it is, I've been given every tool that I need to do whatever it is I want to do. Erykah Badu has a great line from one of her songs. And she says, if we were made in his image, then call us by our names, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people misread that to, oh, we are gods. I don't really take it quite that far, but I think we were made in his image. I think that there's, we have a lot of abilities that we don't give ourselves credit for. Yeah. When we tap in, when we tap in to whatever it is that we think is there, I'll call it God easily. For a different audience, I can easily change my vocabulary to universe or life or whatever. I'm not real dogmatic that way. But yeah, I think that we have a lot at our disposal that we rarely call on. And a lot of times it's just that intention. We can set the intention for, when I walk into that meeting, I want this kind of impact on those people. And it comes partly from my words, but I think it also comes partly from my presence and from my intention being in there. Right. So, and even in that, I found other people that were really into that kind of aspect of it. And I'd tell them, just walk the room, walk by everybody in this room and spread your good juju before I go on up there in matters. Right. So, yeah, I think we, to me, it's kind of a light process. I'll put on my vinegar face sometimes and go in and whack my finger at them, and I'll, work the process. But to me, it's very light, because I don't have to worry about, do we win this one? Because this one is not the important one. That fluoride thing was, your fluoride thing is, but if you don't win it, it doesn't really change the long-term game. We're still in it. We're still, pushing every day, providing resistance to the bad things and trying to feed good things coming our way. Right. Yeah. So to me, it's almost, I make myself really gravitate and lock on and hold on to it, but it doesn't affect me inside that way. It's just something I go do. I joyfully make time for it. Yeah. It's that important. It's to me, what I see happening here in this town, it's not going all our way. I promise you that. What I see happening in this town, what I see happening in this county, we are having an impact. And when me and the people, that worked on that project with me, when we go into city council, they don't always do what we tell them to, but they don't miss a word of what we say. I can tell you that much.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the group dynamic, because it's not just you, there are other people involved. What's that like to be able to share the ups and downs with people that are really committed to making your life a better place there? What's that like?
It's a beautiful thing. In the Fluoride one in particular, when we got into the campaign phase for the political campaign on the ballot, we brought in a lot of university students. We tapped into a handful of them and wound up getting quite a bit of help. And to me, that was like beautiful, because you got these people that are 20, 24, 25 years old that probably have never been politically involved before. And they recognize this issue and they want to get involved, and you find a way to put them to work on it, whether it's knocking doors, passing out flyers, doing videos, sharing stuff. You have all these different things. And we probably had, I think, 60 people involved at different, parts. Very few were all the way through, but 60 different people. And probably 50 of them, it was the first political engagement they've ever done. They got to walk away with a win, man. I mean, that's a win,
yeah. That's cool.
And it's when I see them now, I mean, we've got a connection. And, there's some that are on a very different political side than I am, but we'll always have that connection, that we worked on this together. So we always have that line of communication open for the next project that we want to go work on.
Right. That's a good story.
So, it's and like I said, we don't win them all, but every time we get anybody out of the house to do anything, we've created a new radical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somebody, and what I call a radical is anybody who's willing to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
So the bar is pretty low, but getting them activated that first time to go do something and then being able to deliver a win, I tell you what, that's a big thing.
So, subsequent to what you've done with the Fluoride, you ran for office, ran for mayor, county commissioner. You and I talked about it. You didn't win, but you got a fair number of votes and pretty decent percentage. But it's also switched you on to that whole tabulation voting process. And is that where your work is now, kind of being a watchdog around this?
Yeah, I won't say entirely singularly focused, but that's the election thing. There's nothing bigger here than that. Right. In 2016, we actually had an election that was overturned in court. There were only 2 voters in it. And they know how they voted. And the results came out opposite, and not just opposite. We had 2 votes, and it was a municipal utility district. Some people know what that is. And basically, it's a piece of land that the owners say, we want to develop this. We want to make a corporation out of it. We want to sell bonds. We want to put infrastructure, roads, sewer, all this stuff, and then, sell it out and develop it. So these 2 voters had 1,000 acres, let's say, that they wanted to set up this municipal utility district. So they had to vote. Only those 2 voters got to vote in it. And they had to elect a board of directors for that corporation. And the vote came out. They voted the same way because they were actually the municipal utility district as well.
Right.
They knew how they voted, but some of the votes were 1-1. Some of the votes were 0-1. And it's like, this is not how we did it. So they went to court. They challenged it. Both sides provided complimentary testimony. The judge had no option but to overturn the election. So that was in December of 2016. And so January of 2017, we finally heard about that because there was nothing in the news, and we went in and started asking questions like, well, if the judge says the election results don't match the votes actually counted, you owe us an explanation.
Right, exactly.
And of course, they were hoping it would just go away. And so we were down there for 5 weeks asking that question. And our elections administrator said, she came into Commissioner's Court said, oh, we solved the problem on that election. We actually found a mobile ballot box that had not been counted, and those 2 votes were on that mobile ballot box. And it's like, oh my goodness. It turns out there was 1,816 votes that were not counted in the 2016 election. And they're just like, problem solved. We're like, no, problem's not solved. You owe us an explanation on that. And you also owe us an explanation that those 2 votes weren't counted in that election. Where did those 2 votes come from?
Right.
That were counted. And we still don't have answers on those. We've got some really big problems in our elections office. So we've been working on those for the last 2 years. We have some 15-year-old elections equipment that in 2017, the same time all this stuff I just explained was going on, they wanted to buy new elections equipment, but with no paper ballots. And they tried to jam that down our throat. And somehow I got appointed to the Citizens Committee that was going to make the recommendation. That Citizens Committee was rigged, that Citizens Committee was tampered with. And had I not been on it, nobody would have known that.
Right.
So when the group put forth their recommendation to buy this system with no paper ballot trail, I had to go into the Elections Commission and then into Commissioner's Court and convince them that they can't make this purchase decision, not till we go back and revisit it. And so I am stopping that. But now we're still trying to get a new paper ballot system, so that fight's not over. But until we, in my opinion, until we get some very acute, very persistent election problem fixed, nothing else really matters here.
Right, exactly. Because you could have the best intentions, the best ideas, and the best organization, and they can just start flipping votes and flipping switches, and then now you're back into the, government sucks, cynical kind of argument position, and throw your hands up in the air. And I just want to say I really respect what you're doing. It takes a lot of tenacity, and I really appreciate it. And hopefully, again, some of that work can expand outwards, just like your fluoride work did as well, which is what we're being able to, piggyback on as a result of that. Jasper just decided to become part of our work.
Hey, Jasper.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share with people, Sam? I mean, it's a kind of an opportunity to, give a shout out to the world or offer some encouragement to folks. Anything you want to share?
I'll say this: for most people that have never been to a county commissioner's court or a city council meeting or a school board meeting, I understand why you wouldn't go. I went through 40-something years of my life having never been, 45. And that first commissioner's court meeting I went to, they were talking, their specialized language, and it was all flying right by me. And honestly, it took me 60, 90, 120 days, probably 60 days before I said a word in there, going every week. And, we got our first success, that same year. We stopped tax increase where they were giving them all pay raises. And we did that, 90, 120 days out of the blocks from a bunch of people that had never been to commissioner's court before. So I don't want people to underestimate their power in their hometowns to actually go out and engage. And they make it hard, I'll tell you that, because they'll do their best, the first several times you get up to talk to embarrass you and make you feel like you don't know anything, and you're not suitable to come in here and talk in county or city or school government because you don't know anything. They will do that to you. Don't let it get to you. Get yourself educated and be a little bit persistent, and kind of step outside yourself and realize that there's nothing they can really do to hurt you, if you don't allow them that.
Right.
And just start pushing and making progress. Get to know these people. Be able to pick up the phone and have their admin want to connect to you because they know it's in their best interest not to avoid your call. Right.
Right.
So it's a process. They try to make it seem very inaccessible. If you think there's something to be won, you got to find a way to make it accessible to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth doing. It's not for everybody, I can tell you that. The level that I and what you guys are participating in, it is hard. It's not for everybody. But, you know, in every town going on, there's somebody leading a charge that somebody can go join on. And that's a good way to get started.
Right. And the key thing too is, again, you know, you live in San Marcos, college town. It's not a, you know, it's bigger than Fredericksburg, but it's not as big as Austin. And probably at the kind of the, I wouldn't say the limit, but it's at a size where you can actually get involved and make an impact and make a difference. And I think
I call it it's still at a human scale.
Yeah.
It's not at a giant systemic monster scale. It's still a human scale here.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the mantra that I've been repeating to people, that if you do want to have higher quality of life, you do want to be able to have a say in governance at a local level, the smaller towns are where it's at. And I think that that's kind of where we need to bring our attention versus these, you know, Agenda 21 megalopolises that they have in store for us. So these are the front lines of where we can actually be effective.
You affect it, and you affect a lot more people than you know in your town. It's once a week, I'll be cafe going here and there, and honestly, it happens. I get stopped and somebody wants to thank me for that, or say they've been watching us do something else. And you do impact a lot of people a lot more than you know.
Yeah. I agree with that. Well, listen, Sam, thank you for taking time out today. And
man, I appreciate what you're doing. I really do. I like the way you get the message out there, and I like what you guys are doing in Fredericksburg. And I guess I'll see you, what is it, next week? At the
I think it's on the 20, I think it's the 26th, right? Is that it? Yeah, you'll be at our little barbecue opening party, so to speak. Yeah, we'll be happy to have you, and look forward to seeing you as well. So thanks again. Take good care, and I'll see you down the road, all right?
That sounds good.
All right.
Appreciate it.
That was Sam Brannon from San Marcos, Fluoride Free San Marcos, amongst many other things. And you've been watching the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. Take good care. And remember, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'll be back on Sunday night with the 11th house and the Sunday night astral live stream. See you again, Sam.